All right, here it goes. Welcome to Brew Crime, the podcast where we drink brews, talk crime, conspiracies, or whatever catches our attention. This is Mike and my co-host.
I'm Jen from our True Crime podcast. Filling in for JT.
Yeah, we just couldn't make things work for JT to get on here. He's really busy right now and needed to get the episode recorded. So
because I kidnapped him and threw him in my trunk so I can come on your show.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. And without anyone knowing what this is about, I brought in replacement workers. That's going to be a major thing in this episode.
Oh, foreshadow.
Yes. So this is the first of our episodes of the crimes of the Northwest Territories in Canada. And I'm sure our non-Canadian listeners will have no idea anything about the Northwest Territories at all.
I know it's Northwest.
Yeah.
And in Canada, yeah.
We've got 3 territories in Canada. There's the Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. And the Northwest Territories is sandwiched in the middle, and it's the northernmost part of the country. And just to kind of give an idea of the size versus population of this territory, where is it here? The landmass is 1.18 million square kilometers. California is 403,000 kilometers squared. So 0.4 million square kilometers. But the population is estimated for this year 45,668.
And how many polar bears? No, just kidding.
Probably just as many or more.
Just as many, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a huge portion of land.
You said the Northwest Territory, the Yukon, and what? What other one?
None of it.
None of it?
None of it, yeah. Close.
Okay. Okay.
I got
confused. None of it?
It's the easternmost territory, so northeasternmost territory, and none of it is mostly indigenous, mostly Inuit people. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good to know.
So when originally Northwest Territories was all of that and none of it, and it separated into 2 years ago. And so mostly indigenous people in none of it.
Okay.
Of course, not all.
Versus like none of it. Like how much do you get? Oh, none of it. That's what I thought you said. And I'm like, okay, I was confused. Thank you.
That one's spelled Nunavut. Nunavut. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And it's actually bigger and only about 5,000 more people.
Oh.
So yeah.
Wow.
Vast.
Lots of land.
Tundra, yeah. Not a lot of land that has things growing, but a lot of land. But yes, what the territories in general have is a lot of minerals, like think gold, ore, diamonds, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of land to strip.
Okay.
So
strip
this case,
land. Okay.
Yeah, strip the land. Yeah. So this case is called labor dispute and environmental disaster turns deadly. Giant mine.
Oh.
Yes. And the beer pairing for this episode is not really about the name of the beer or anything. It's just that if you don't take this beer seriously, you'll be in a lot of trouble. This beer is from Barnside Brewing. It's their Batch 200 Estate Barley Wine, which is a blackberry brandy barrel-aged beer, and it's 11.8% alcohol.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
and it's got a lot of
alcohol.
Yeah, a lot of berry, a little bit of like the caramelly thing going on. It's roasty. It hides the alcohol well, but it still tastes like it can kick your ass.
It's dangerous, is what you're saying.
Yes, it's dangerous.
Just like a mine.
Just like this case.
Well,
All right.
All right, sock it to me. Let's go.
Let's do it. Giant mine is no longer operational, but the fallout from this mine can be felt to this day, be it environmental disaster or the violence and death that came out of one of Canada's worst labor disputes in history. Let's start with some way back history first. The Dene First Nations tell the story of when gold was first found here in the location of current day Yellowknife, the capital city of Northwest Territories. It is said that Liza Crooked Hand was in the area picking berries, which she was known to do. So this is a quote from Stacy Sudberg, Dene First Nations member. All of a sudden, she comes across this golden rock, which meant nothing to our people back in the day. She picked up the rock, and not knowing that it was gold, she brought it back to her cabin.
Just a pretty rock.
Yeah, just a pretty rock, right?
Mm-hmm.
The story has so many versions, but it is believed a prospector, Johnny Baker, that was in the area of Yellowknife to trade, saw the nugget in Liza's windowsill. She may or may not have been given trade goods that she was promised, but that year, Johnny Baker and his partner would lay stakes on the first 21 giant claims in Yellowknife, and this is when the history of the now city would change forever.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Damn white people.
I'm just thinking, I'm sure he did what my brother did. He's like, hey, Jenny, I'll give you this nickel for that dime because nickels are worth more because they're bigger.
What a dick.
Yeah, I know. He's 6 years older than me, so
just like this guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sure he pulled a fast one and did something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, it brought much wealth. It also brought much devastation to the environment and the Dene First Nations, and even later to the city of Yellowknife. This would be when Yellowknife would become a mining camp that would begin to explode in population. The first gold brick from one of these mines would be poured in 1938. And on June 3rd, 1948, Giant Mine would pour its first brick by then owners Frobisher Explorations. Now, this was not a mine with massive gold nuggets, and all of the gold flakes had to be extracted from rock mined out of the earth by baking the rocks in extreme temperatures. This was a pretty standard mine where they would blast rock underneath the ground and haul it out to processing areas, and it would be superheated to extract the gold. A byproduct of this mining was the creation of arsenic trioxide dust.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't have to tell most people that arsenic is deadly. From 1949 to 1951, all arsenic trioxide that was created was emitted out into the environment. This would be to the tune of 7,500 kilograms a day, or 16,538 pounds per day.
Holy cow.
This would lead to horrible health issues for the Dene. We are talking sickness, skin lesions, mostly because the Dene would use snowmelt to get drinking water, and the arsenic was spewing over the area unchecked.
Oh.
Yeah. So we haven't even got to the crime yet, but this is already a crime in my opinion.
Well, it is a crime.
Yeah.
Poor First Nations folks, they've been through the ringer, haven't they?
Still get fucked.
Just want to survive, and here we
Yeah. In April 1951, a 2-year-old Dene kid died due to arsenic poisoning from drinking the water from this area. The mine's current owner, Giant Yellowknife Gold Mines Limited, paid the Dene family $750 for the death of their child.
In 1930 something, right?
1951. So I'm pretty sure a child's life is worth more than $8,658 in today's money.
I would think so. But
I would think so too, right? Yeah.
Who am I to say I'm not a corporation? I'm a human with a heart.
Yeah, and 2 kids, and you would not accept that, I'm sure.
No.
October 1951, there would finally be something done to try and reduce the poisoning of the earth with the installation of Cottrell electrostatic precipitators.
Oh, okay.
Weird words. Don't ask me what that is. I have no idea.
Yeah, I was going to say I have no idea.
Yeah. This would reduce the output to only 5,500 kilograms per day, which is a start, but it's still disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
This was also the year they decided to start hiding the poisonous dust underground for storage.
Hiding it?
You just storing it in barrels and stuff, but just leaving it underground.
Okay. Yeah. Can't see it. Can't
deal
with it. Yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
1959 would see another unit installed, reducing the output to between 200 and 300 kilograms per day. So a huge reduction, but still gross. Moving forward to 1974, there would be an uncontrolled release of tailing water into Back Bay, which would contaminate Back Bay, Baker Creek, and Yellowknife Bay in Great Slave Lake.
Unreal.
Yeah. Over the years, the government would begin to study the health effects of the contamination around Yellowknife, and the National Indian Brotherhood would also conduct independent studies. So we'll come back to this at the end of today's case, but suffice to say, the damage from the mining will be with us for generations. 100% for generations.
Do you know if arsenic has like a half-life, or is it?
We'll get to it, but no, there's no
Okay.
half-life. Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's going to always be there. So Giant Mine has been owned by quite a few companies over its lifetime. From 1948 to 1986, it was owned by Falconbridge. In 1986 to 1990, it would be owned by Pamour of Australia. Well, the mine had been very lucrative in the late 1980s. They would see the gold production falter and the prices of gold would plummet in the late 80s. Pamour would struggle, but in the end, they'd file for bankruptcy. Out of this, Royal Oak, a tiny company that had 0 mines at the time, would be able to purchase the 2 Pamour mines, one of which was Giant Mine. The purchase price was $35.6 million in 1990. That would be almost $411 million today, but this was pennies at the time for a mine claim. So Royal Oak was an American company founded and run by CEO Peggy Witt, one of the only women in the game at the time. And if it wasn't for how terrible this woman was, I'd be like, that's awesome.
Well, no offense, but when anybody that's in that kind of company, I would think is kind of
Yeah,
seems like it would
exactly.
be terrible. They'd have to be successful.
Peggy was from Nevada and founded Royal Oak in Washington State. Peggy had a style that ruffled a lot of feathers. Seeing as profit from Giant Mine were way down when she purchased the mine, she planned to hack and slash whatever she could to make the mine profitable until gold prices started to climb. So gold had been $600 US per ounce in the 1980s and had fallen to $350 US. So a huge drop. This would begin to get ugly with the local 4 chapter of Canadian Association of Smelters and Applied Workers Union, CASA. Royal Oak was working to slash safety checks and requirements, but those were set by the union at this time, and they had no intention of letting the company mess with safety. I mean, mines are already dangerous enough.
Right.
Yeah. In 1992, Royal Oak and the union would be bargaining for a new contract as their current one was up. Royal Oak wanted to slash wages by 6%, cut perks, create a ridiculous workplace discipline system, and cut safety. Now, these miners made good money in 1992, with the average worker getting paid $77,000 a year, so $144,000 today. And with overtime and bonuses, they could make upwards of $100,000 a year or $187,000 today. But this was brutal work and would likely shorten your life.
Right. I mean, it's
Think
dangerous.
arsenic. Yeah.
No, exactly.
And explosions.
Is
Like,
that
this
worth that money?
I don't know, right?
I don't know.
So you had to live in a place that had extreme weather, and life was not easy at times, with winter temperatures dropping as low as, or possibly lower than, minus 40 Celsius, which happens to be minus 40 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That alone would make me say no. I don't
Exactly,
care how much
right?
money.
Little did Peggy know she was picking a fight with a small militant union that did not trust Royal Oak or her management. Well, the union and Royal Oak came to a tentative agreement on April 1992. Union members had said that they would accept no concessions. The union leadership would recommend the union sign the contract, but 72% would vote no. They would decide to strike as soon as legally possible. So that would be on May 23rd, 1992. May 22nd, union members would show up to work their last day before the strike, but they were turned away at the gates. Royal Oak Mines had locked out the workers.
Seems about right.
Yeah, right. Union members would notice a bunch of strangers milling around inside the mine compound, though, And these would be strike breakers, also known as scabs by many union workers.
Mm-hmm.
So these are workers brought in to work in place of the union members, undermining the bargaining process. Peggy may not have known this, but while it was not illegal, this was the first time strike breakers had been used in Canada in 45 years.
Oh, wow.
So at the time, it was only illegal to do this in Quebec, but it is now also illegal in British Columbia to use replacement workers, but nowhere else in Canada.
I don't think it's illegal here in the States.
No, it's definitely not. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. These men did not fuck around, though, and this was going to be a serious battle. So did I mention the Union was militant?
You did. I heard that.
Yes, I did.
I did. And you know what? Since we're talking about this on a true crime podcast, I would assume that nothing good is going to happen here.
No.
I'm bracing myself.
You're going to be shocked, I think.
Mm.
With the lockout in place, the guys got to the picket lines and surrounded the mine. They would not let any replacement workers in and would force their way onto school buses heading into the property just in case. But Royal Oak would fly workers into the mine property and put them up in temporary structures. So they were bringing in by helicopter to get by all the strikers. So the union members would in turn scream all night and throw rocks at metal roofs, keeping replacement workers up all night. It would not take long for an underwear-clad Miss Piggy doll to be strung up, standing in for Peggy. Oh, yeah.
Nice. I feel bad for those workers. I mean, they're just people trying to make some money. You know what I mean? The scab workers.
Yeah.
I get it, but
I know, right?
Yeah.
Union members and replacement workers would scream and yell at each other over the fences, and blood would boil. June would see a riot break out where the fences would be pulled down and union workers would storm the mine site and damage the property and beat up a few security guards.
Oh.
One story talked of a man with a rock cocked above his head, ready to strike a security guard, but he hit the ground instead. This would see the security company quit and walk away.
Oh, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, I know, right? In turn, Royal Oak brought in the most well-known strike-breaking firm of all time. Can you guess?
No, Mark Zuckerberg.
The Pinkertons.
Oh.
Yes, the Pinkertons.
Okay, yeah.
If you don't know
the
Pinkertons, they are an American detective agency and security agency founded in 1850. They have a horrible history of strike breaking, and Peggy likely knew that.
Mm-hmm.
So with the Pinkertons in place and the RCMP, or Royal Canadian Mounted Police, also brought in, and they have a long tradition of working against unions too.
Yeah,
things would go bad.
Mm-hmm.
So a riot squad was brought in, as well as an ERT, or emergency response team, better known in the U.S. as a SWAT team. Of course, the Canadian territories had no experience with this kind of policing. There's no one there.
What could go wrong? I mean, seriously, what could go wrong?
What could go wrong? The police were not welcome in town either, and had run-ins with union workers all the time. Another riot would break out with the Pinkertons on site, and 30 people would end up being charged. So the police would be amazed that union strikers would not stand down with guns held to their heads.
Huh.
Oh, yeah.
Don't say.
The Pinkertons and the RCMP were just the escalation that the small union group needed. So they upped their violence.
Oh.
They would sneak onto the mine property and start causing havoc. A small group of them would be known as the Cambodian Cowboys. I don't know why. And they would start knocking down power poles and shorting out wires. This was all while harassing the Pinkertons, which is ballsy.
It is. But I mean, it's just a little mischief. I mean, really?
So far.
Yeah.
They would up the ante later in June when they began sneaking onto the mine proper and heading way down into the mine and spray painting really graphic anti-scab slogans all over the walls and the machines. With the anchor still flaring up and no movement with negotiations, Al Shearing and Tim Bettiger would steal blasting caps, fuses, and explosives from one of the many explosive sheds underground that happened to never be locked.
Well, that's smart.
Yeah.
When there's a bunch of unrest, I mean, you would
Yeah.
totally want to keep
You would
that
think, right?
unlocked. Yeah, free for all.
So July would see Al Shearing and Tim Bettiger blow up a communications satellite dish on the mine property right beside some housing. Union members were calling for the death of scabs on the outside of the fences, and things were getting even more scary. In town, people on both sides were getting beaten up. I went out in the evenings. Local pubs became dangerous to spend time at, and family members had to stay in at night in fear of someone behind a bush with a bottle ready to cause damage.
It's almost like the purge.
Yeah, right?
Seriously. Seriously.
Yes. And this is the capital city.
I know.
I mean, it's tiny, but still.
I can only imagine how scary that would be for everyone.
If things were not crazy enough yet, at the beginning of September, Al and Tim took it to the next level by blowing up equipment that helped pump air underground for the miners to be able to breathe. If this was not a warning, I don't know what it would be like.
No,
Fuck.
seriously. Well, they kind of screwed themselves over there too, because even if they would, I mean, they wouldn't have any air to go back to if
Well, I
some
mean, you just
miraculous
replace the
reason.
machines. Yeah.
Well, true.
Yeah. A very small group of people were taking this labor dispute to a dangerous level. Some workers had decided after months of this dispute that they had to cross picket lines as they could not support their families anymore.
Right.
September 17th, 1992, the union would file an unfair labor practices complaint against Royal Oak. They would allege union busting and other unfair practices. So, September 18th, 1992 would become the worst day in the dispute. 750 feet or 230 meters underground, Roger Warren, and then some people don't believe this was him, but he's the person that admitted to it, would set up 38 kilograms or 83 pounds of explosives beside a track that was used to transport both workers and ore cars.
Holy moly.
There would be a tripwire that supposedly was only supposed to go off if an ore car went by, as it had a different setup than a cart that had workers on it. But things wouldn't go that way. The bomb would go off, and the destruction was horrifying. 9 miners were killed instantly, some being so badly damaged that there was little to no remains. 6 of the dead were CASA union members who had decided that they had to get back to work. That was Chris Neal, 29, Joe Pandev, 55, Norm Huri, 53, David Vanosky, 25, and Shane Riggs, 27, and Vern Fukuoka, I think it is, 36. The other 3 were replacement workers: Robert Rosell, 37, Malcolm Soller, 38, and Arnold Russell, 41. So yeah,
Horrible.
just horrible.
At least it went quickly.
Yeah, there was no suffering
not
with that.
needed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So at first, people thought this was just another charge set off at the mine to extract gold, but it would not take long for miners to figure out that there was a serious problem. One mine supervisor would rush to the explosion site to see the carnage. And it was mentioned that he noticed that there was like a pressure change. So you could see there wasn't airflow anymore. I forgot to write that part down, but yeah. Mm-hmm. He noticed there was something wrong because of the pressure change, and he ran to that area. The local hospital would catch wind of the explosion and ready for a mass casualty event, but no response was needed as all the men were dead instantly. 1 week after the explosion, the mine would actually reopen. It didn't take long.
Not at all.
Of course, the RCMP would ramp up an investigation into all 3 bombings, and it was not easy going. Al Shearing and Tim Bettiger would be arrested and tried for the bombings of the satellite dish and the pump equipment and end up with charges. Al Shearing would spend 2.5 years in prison, and Tim would get 3 years in prison. Of course, these 2 men were the main suspects for the deadly bombing also. The RCMP would start pushing union members to do polygraph tests to prove that they were not the bombers. Royal Oak was refusing to do any negotiations with the union until they had charges laid in the bombing. So things would go nowhere until October of 1993. all while the lockout was still going strong.
Wow. How
Long
long is
time,
that? Yeah.
long time.
Long time.
Yeah. One of the RCMP investigators would become convinced that Roger Warren was the bomber after interviewing and polygraphing him. In a long interrogation where Roger Warren would leave partway through to pick up his daughter and then head back to the station, he would admit to the bombing on October 15th. He would go on to say that he had no intention of killing people, but only proving a point to Royal Oak that the Union could cause them problems too. After the confession, they would take Roger out to the mine and get him to walk through the plan he had to blow up the mine car. He would show them how he got down into the mine through an abandoned shaft and trace the steps down the mine. He even show where he got lost looking for the explosives, because he wasn't someone who actually dealt with the explosives in the mine. This had come up in RCMP investigation of the bombing when the mine manager that had found the carnage helped recreate the scene and found sets of tracks in the dirt that would show a man getting lost and would lead to a pair of boots. These boots would end up being traced back to Roger also. So he actually burnt the original pair of boots and realized that he might get traced back to it. So he bought a new pair and then tried to make them look like they had been well used.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just like, give me a break.
I just probably would have left it as it was.
I know, right?
That would make more sense and be cheaper.
It would, yeah. I didn't write this, but it sounded like it was a fairly well-known pair of boots that could be bought at the time.
Like a certain brand?
Yeah, brand and model.
Mm-hmm.
So they could actually track down every person that had bought that boot in town.
And then they found out he bought 2 pair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So with Roger Warren waiting for trial, the Canadian Labor Relations Board would hold a hearing for the complaint of union busting and other bad practices. In a public meeting, the Canadian Labor Relations Board would give their findings of this review to a group of people that were mostly totally union supporters. The findings would be 100% against Royal Oak Mines, and while they had some bad faith from the union as well, there had never been a complaint about that. So they weren't going to go against the union because there was never a complaint about it. That's it.
Okay.
So ending an 18-month lockout, the Canadian Labor Relations Board would force Royal Oak to reinstate the original offer the union had rejected, with slight reduction in pay and a longer wait between safety checks in the mine. So this time the union would vote 96% to ratify the new agreement. But after 3 bombings, the huge fights.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's amazing,
unreal.
right? The government just said no. Even though all this stuff happened, the union is right. You have been bargaining in bad faith. Get back in there. Roger Warren would end up on trial in September of 1994. With family members of the victims and fellow union members in attendance, Roger would recant his confession and plead not guilty. Because he pled guilty to the police on tape, they would have enough evidence to convict him in 1995. He would be sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 20 years. He would appeal the sentence, but it would just be rejected outright. Some believe that he was only taking the blame for this to try to get the union negotiating starting again, and then they would realize there was no evidence and they would let him out. But I have a feeling that's probably not true.
You think he really did do it?
I think so, yeah. But
yeah. But did he
I can
alone?
see why they thought that, because Peggy would not allow any negotiating to start until someone was arrested, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Life with 20 years doesn't seem like it is strong enough. But
well, that's all you can do in Canada. That is the longest
really?
sentence. Yeah.
Wow. And you automatically get parole, huh?
At 20 years, yeah.
At 20 years? Wow. Not
in
us,
the
man.
end, yeah. In the end, Roger Warren would get day parole in 2014 after 18 years in jail and full parole in 2016. Roger would die 3 years later at 75. In 1999, Royal Oak would go into receivership and lose the rights to the mine they owned to the government of Canada. Miramar Giant Mines Limited would take over the site to help wind down as the gold veins had dried up and the environmental disaster was immense. To this day, the arsenic trioxide that could be stored frozen in the old mine. It has been abandoned since 2005. I find it criminal that mining companies can cause environmental disasters and just walk away.
Mhm.
Canada is now on hook for $1 billion cleanup and site monitoring forever.
Wow. That
Remediation is
good.
expected to take years with a target date of 2028 to finish it.
What are they going to do with what do you do with all that arsenic? I mean, how do you get rid of arsenic? Do you know? Besides give it to all your enemies. Okay.
In the end, the mine would produce 220 tons of gold and a captured total of 237,000 tons of highly toxic arsenic trioxide dust. That doesn't speak to the tons that were spewed out into the environment. A spoonful of arsenic trioxide can kill an adult, and this mine has within it enough to kill every person on Earth.
Unreal. For gold.
So, yeah, right? There is so much more to the story. And if you want to check it out, you can go to the CBC podcast, Giant Mine Underground. And it's just, there's so much. It was an 7 or 8 part series. It's really good. Had to leave out, like, one of the members of the union tried to split off and create a new union to bargain with Giant Mines.
What? Can you do that?
No, not legally. And
Yeah,
they
I
were
was gonna
bargaining
say.
with him, but then that fell apart. So then they refused to bargain with the union. And oh yeah, it is.
Well, I just
super
wrote it
dicey.
down so I can listen to that tonight.
Yeah,
So
it's
the CBC is what you said?
yeah, CBC podcast. It's Giant Mine Underground.
Giant Mine Underground. Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
go listen to that.
So CBC is a Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, so it was created by the government basically, and it's really, really in depth, really interesting. They interviewed union members, non-union members, family members of the people that were killed. It's really, really intriguing. This is just the tip of the iceberg, but there's only so much you can do on one episode.
Exactly. So what are they going to do with all the arsenic? I mean,
in perpetuity,
just
it'll
gonna
have
stay-
to be monitored. They're keeping it frozen underground, and that's all they can do. There's no use for arsenic trioxide. It is a terrible poison. It can't be used for anything that I know of.
And you can't probably incinerate it or anything like that.
Actually, you know what? There was one article I read, and there was one company somewhere in Canada that was working on a possibility of making glass out of it. And at that point, it was stable and it wasn't as toxic. But that's still something that is like being looked into. That's not something that actually is being done.
Right, but how much glass can you?
Well, but it would be like make glass out of it and then put it back underground. But at least now it's not unstable.
Exactly.
Because they have to keep it frozen so it doesn't puff up into the air, right?
Well, you said it's frozen underground. Did you ever see the movie John Carpenter's The Thing?
No, I don't think I did.
And there's like some kind of alien spaceship under all this ice, and it like tunnels out, or they go down and they open it, and then all of a sudden like hell breaks loose. That's just kind of what I think of when like all the frozen arsenic. Somebody's going to be dumb enough and dig down there one day, and all hell will break loose.
It'll be like, you know, when humans die out, and the next whatever animal that springs up will dig there.
The roaches.
Yeah. When roaches become human size and they take over and they start building houses. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. And they start researching their brethren, Keith Richards, and
exactly. Poor Keith. God bless him.
He'll outlive us all.
But that's scary. I mean, I don't even want to know what other stuff is underground that could kill us all.
Oh, yeah, no. Mining in general, I know we need it, but also the amount of minerals that are already mined, we can do a lot of recycling to not have to extract new chemicals.
Right. Do we really need the gold, though? Is what, you know?
Well, no, of course not. But same with diamonds, right?
I mean, they're pretty. but we don't need them.
Yeah. The majority of diamonds that are mined are held in safes to keep the mine or the diamonds that are out there expensive.
Expensive, exactly.
Because they're not actually rare
Not
at
rare.
all.
That's a De Beers, and the De Beers owns all of them, right?
Most of them, yeah. It's gross.
It is gross. I like them though. My 20th anniversary is coming up, and I keep saying I want a huge one, huge diamond. But it's disgusting.
My.
Yeah.
I'm just happy my wife doesn't even have diamonds because she didn't want diamonds.
Oh, you lucked out.
Yeah,
I like them. I'm like a crow. If it's sparkly, I want it.
Oh, she wanted cubic zirconians. Like she still wanted sparkle. She just had no fucking. Like she didn't want diamonds.
She didn't care. Yeah, she didn't care if they were.
Just got to be sparkly. I don't want it to be expensive.
Yeah. Well, I do.
I think my ring was more expensive because I don't like shiny things. I don't like fancy things. Mm-hmm. So I had to actually like dig deeper to find it.
Oh, what kind of ring did you get?
It's actually just stainless steel, but it's like carved and it's got mountains and trees and a moon on it.
Nice. Oh, nice. Oh, that's pretty. I like that. My husband's gone through 4 rings. The first one was expensive.
Number 2.
Yeah. The first one was really expensive, and then he lost it somewhere. He took it off to wash his hands, and now he's wearing the $1.67 rings from Temu that he keeps losing.
But yeah, that's the case.
That's unreal. And they just dug their heels in. They were not.
Oh, they did. They were not fucking around.
No.
And I mean, like, I didn't put it in there. Like, a lot of the union members had to bring their kids to the line because their wives were working as well, right? Because, they made a lot of money, but when they were on strike, they had no income. So their wives were the only people making money. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they're probably not making a lot.
And Miss Peggy was hoping that they would kind of like what the Hollywood is doing with the writer's strike.
Yeah.
They're trying to outlast
exactly
the writers, saying, one of these days you're going to run out of money and you're going to come back.
But these guys, 18 months. And, people that were friendly with the union were like giving food and stuff to the families, giving like if a kid wanted a toy, the family couldn't buy it, they would give the kid the toy and stuff. But
community, right?
Imagine how hard it would be to go 18 months without a paycheck.
You couldn't survive without the help of others. You couldn't.
No, yeah, not at all. I mean,
because
if I went
think
a month and a half without a paycheck, I'd probably have to go
be on the street. Yeah. I mean, I know we would here. And most Americans are living that way. If without a couple paychecks, you're gone. But wow.
Yeah.
And the longer they went without work or without seeming to be heard or feeling like the company that they've worked so many years for doesn't give a shit about them.
Exactly.
The angrier they got.
Been working there, a lot of them before Royal Oak took over the mine, right?
Risking their life on a daily basis. And the company, well, it's any company really. You're just irreplaceable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unreal.
And they proved after 18 months and after all the bullshit, they weren't replaceable.
Right.
Unfortunately, a couple of years down the road, the mine shut down anyways because it just wasn't profitable anymore. But they could have had a lot more years. 9 people had to lose
their life. Yeah. Wow. It's a stain on that company, that's for sure.
Well, they went bankrupt, and Peggy, I think, is still running mines in the States. And it sounds like she got into, it sounds like she's also got into a meat packing plant or some bullshit too. So fuck over another industry.
Another industry. Wow. Peggy doesn't sound very nice.
No, she really is not a likable character.
No, she's not.
No. But, what can you do?
No, I'm surprised.
Don't work for her.
I'm surprised that didn't ruin her career, but I guess.
No, unfortunately, because she went bankrupt, she lost the mines in Canada, but she's in the States. So bankruptcy in the state, you can wash your hands of it. In Canada, you can't. But
so now she's here in the U.S.
Oh, she was living in Vancouver during the time of Giant Mine and then flying up to Yellowknife once in a while. But the company she has now is centered in Washington, from the understanding that I've got. And she, like, when she went bankrupt up here, she just lost her mines and disappeared. But as a Canadian, if you go bankrupt, yeah, you go bankrupt, but after a certain amount of years, you still have to pay back the money. In the States, you
Got
wipe
ya.
your hands from it, right?
Now she didn't own the mine. She was just like the CEO president.
Well,
of
no,
it, correct?
her company bought the
Oh, okay.
two
Okay.
mines. That was
Got you.
the 23.5 million or whatever at that time.
Gotcha.
So yeah, they owned the claim.
Got ya.
But yeah, that's the case.
That's unreal. Shows you how much human life is worth, right?
Not much to CEOs.
No.
It's all about the dollar, right?
Mm-hmm.
All about your shareholders, blah blah blah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm. That was interesting. I can't wait to listen to the CBC thing on it. Pretty interesting. I like stuff like that.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to Brew Crime. You can find us on all social media platforms at Brew Crime. We have a Facebook group at Brew Crime the Group. If you'd like to support the show, head to patreon.com/brewcrime now. The money goes towards upgrading equipment and making the show that much better. You get one bonus episode a month, as well as early ad-free access to our episodes. So shout out to Patreon supporters: True Crime Nana, Jay is Rad, 3 Beers In Podcast, and the Faves of Our Lives. Bye.
Bye.
All cases on Brew Crime are written by Mike and JT or a writer we credit on the episode, and sources are put into our show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out our store at tpublic.com/stores/brew-crime-podcast, where you can purchase gear like t-shirts, phone cases, stickers, pillows, and all kinds of other cool stuff. Brew Crime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo designed by Ben Greenberg. Thanks for listening to this episode of Brew Crime Podcast.
Hey, this is Steve from Great Lakes True Crime. We tell stories from Ohio and the rest of the lower Great Lakes region. Give us a listen on your favorite podcast app. And follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Just search for Great Lakes True Crime.
I can speak.
It's hard sometimes,
Oh, God, is it ever?
especially when you're drinking 11% alcohol.
Well, I just started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, with the Pinkertons in place and the RCMP, or Royal Canadian Mounted Police, this sentence is bad. One sec.
That's okay. Story of my life. Hold on one second. I'm
No worries.
recording, sweetheart. I'm sorry, Mike.
No worries.
Love you too. She wanted to show me a fucking dog.
Dogs are cute.
Look at this dog. And what generation are you? I apologize.
No, don't worry about it.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I meant to hit go to, and I hit the wrong
Voicemail or
button.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
No worries.
I'm sorry.
No, like I said, it doesn't matter because there's 2 tracks. So
I know, but still, it's rude.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah. Fuck that. Whatever.
I know True Crime Nana.
Yeah.